Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and I am excited about this episode this week because it is one that is near and dear to my heart. And it's also an episode and a topic that comes up so much when I work with women one on one. And I think it's just something that is universal for most women, not all women. But today we're going to be talking about how emotional eating and our relationship with our body impacts dating. And before we get started on this topic, I want to just say that this episode is definitely for women who dating and cultivating a lifelong partnership with somebody is a priority. If it is not a priority for you to be dating and to be and creating a partnership with someone or an intimate romantic relationship with somebody, if that is not on your bingo card, then this episode might not be for you. But this episode is specifically going to be talking about how our relationship with eating and healing emotional eating and really being authentic with how we want to feel in our bodies, even if, especially if that's weight loss, and how that whole arc impacts how we show up dating and how we can create that relationship that we want. Because I know that specifically for me, this was huge. I Many of you know this, but I didn't get married until I was 40. I met my husband, I was 39 actually. And for me, I was one of those girls and, grew up into a young woman and a woman who I really just craved that partnership, that person who could be my ride or die, was going to be my husband. I wanted marriage. I didn't necessarily want children, and my husband and I are not having children, but I always wanted that partner. I always wanted that partner. And it took me a really long time and many years of dating from a place of disconnection with myself to realize that it was that disconnection from my authentic self that was really the block that was creating all of the disappointments that I was having with dating. And it was really revolutionary when I started to see a couple of the ways that I was showing up in my dating life and in the way that I would present myself to potential romantic partners, whether that was on a date or whether that was at a party or an event or something. It was just there were so many when I had when I have finally like had the aha moment where it became clear how my relationship with myself, my habits and secret behavior and secret single behavior with food, and how my true just negative feelings about my body was impacting how I was showing up. And then when I changed those things and I healed them, how much of a huge difference it made in my life. And and it was so interesting because I see this so often with women where we know that we don't feel great about ourselves. We know that we might have some habits or behaviors that are not in alignment with our highest selves. And we also blame the outside world for why we haven't had the relationship that we want, right? It's either men suck, people suck, or work is too crazy. There's all these kind of external circumstantial reasons. But today I really want to just uproot a couple of the personal accountability things that I found for myself and that I also see in my clients that really block and create that hindrance for that relationship and that partnership and that true connection that a lot of the women, and if you're listening to this and you resonate with this, really, really want. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is feeling insecure. Because, and this might seem really obvious, but I know for myself, I felt insecure a lot, but would kind of shove that down and still go on a date. I would shove that down and still go to a party and still talk, still engage in conversation with people. But what I realized was that I felt insecure about being seen, not only physically, but I felt insecure about somebody entering my space and seeing how I behave around food, right? When I got deeper into it, when we talk about being insecure, we talk about feeling insecure about, we could talk about feeling insecure about how we look, but we could also talk about feeling insecure about how we actually live and behave. And when we have that feeling about ourselves, that we know that we're living out of alignment with how we truly want to feel about ourselves and how we truly want to be. And we show up to dates or parties or events and we engage with people hoping to connect with them, but we inside have this insecurity about ourselves. At the end of the day, that's not going to create a connection. That might create, what could happen is that you show up and you're a version of yourself, right? You could show up, maybe you show up as like the mask that you want people to see. But I know for myself, and I've seen it with my clients as well, that mask only goes so far. And that mask is a double-edged sword, because that mask might get people interested, but ultimately that mask is going to feel like a burden, and that mask is going to feel like a cage. And ultimately, that mask is going to keep people at arm's length, and you're not going to create the relationship that you want. And that mask is really only born out of an insecurity. And so when we're willing to face that insecurity and do the work it takes to create alignment in all the areas that make us feel insecure, that is like a fast lane towards connection, because we're connecting with ourselves. Okay, so moving from insecure with ourselves to secure with ourselves in an authentic and honest way, and really taking that time and effort to heal those behaviors and patterns, lose the weight if weight gain and feeling not great in your body is what is causing you to put on that mask and present yourself in a way where you're hiding part of yourselves. If that's what you're doing, healing that is so key. If you don't heal that, you're going to continue to find yourself in disappointing relationships. And to the next point is, what likely can often happen is that you end up attracting unavailable people, right? You end up attracting people that are toxic, people that make you feel bad about yourself, people that, trigger certain anxiousness, that trigger certain anxiousness within you. So this is important also, because when we aren't connected to ourselves and we're emotionally unavailable to ourselves, we will attract emotionally unavailable people into our lives. And what happens when we attract emotionally unavailable people into our lives is we end up in nervous system chaos. Okay, we end up in complete nervous system chaos, and we end up being pulled out of our own center, and we end up either falling into super anxious attachment, where we end up, pursuing people that aren't nice to us, or or giving to get, right? We do, hoping that we'll get in return, but then we don't. Or we could end up creating rifts with people where we expect people to read our minds, and then that we expect people to understand our needs, to read our minds without us having to communicate them. And it ends up like we have really high expectations, and those relationships fall apart, right? So when we attract people that are emotionally unavailable because we're emotionally unavailable to ourselves, we are not going to feel a cohesiveness and an alignment with another person, because either they create this, push and pull, hot and cold, or we are more avoidant and we expect people to understand us, but we're avoidant with ourselves and we don't understand ourselves. We haven't communicated ourselves and they can't understand us. So there's no connection there to be had. Okay. So things like situationships, like I said, hot and cold relationships or dating situations, these are all, if you think about it, these are all types of dynamics which create a scenario where no one can really ever get too close to you. And what happens here is that we keep ourselves safe in this box of yearning. And what yearning does, and this is a box that I lived in probably for like 20 years. Okay, my friends could tell you this. What yearning does, limerence, unrequited love, like all these things, it allows us to feel really deeply, but from arm's length. Because as much as we say we want a relationship, the thing is, a relationship means total visibility. And as an emotional eater or somebody that hates her body, unconsciously, subconsciously, that is the last thing we really want deep down. The last thing we want deep down is total visibility, someone to totally see us in our vulnerable ways. So what our minds do is that they keep us in this place of fantasy while our real life plays out what we really feel safe receiving, which is not very much. And in our conscious world, we're like frustrated, disappointed, don't understand why this isn't happening for us, and continue to blame ourselves or continue to just either even pretend like we don't want relationships at all. That's another thing. Okay, just be like, forget it. This isn't something that's important to me at all. We just deny certain of our desires. So we need to realize that it is our inner world that's creating this outer world. It's our inner world that's creating this outer world. And we need to realize this immediately instead of feeling like victims or becoming jaded to dating, like I said. Because this mindset that it's out there, like it's what's out there that sucks, or it's out there that's making dating feel hard. We need to switch that around and do the work to become emotionally available to ourselves. Okay. When we become emotionally available to ourselves and we embrace all of what we really want for ourselves and we take off that mask. So all of these are going to build on each other. Because what happens is when we're wearing a mask and when we attract unavailable partners and then we get more hardened and we get more of a victim mindset or a jaded mindset, what happens is that we get trapped in our masculine energy, in our hyper masculine tendencies. And when we get trapped in these hyper masculine tendencies that end up blocking off that softness, right? When we're in this defensive mode, we're in this yearning mode, right? Because when, like I said before, when we're in like a fantasy and we're in the yearning, we can feel all the yummy, gushy feelings in the yearning, but at arm's length. So we need to learn, how can we integrate that? How can we bring that emotional sensation, that emotional life into our real conscious life. And we have to realize all of the defensive, hypermasculine tendencies that are warding off all of this softness that is happening. And what we need to cultivate is more softness. We need to cultivate more more of the feeling body, more of the prioritizing, making ourselves feel seen to ourselves. What are our needs? Okay, because what happens is that when we get into these, like, I don't need a relationship, I don't need anyone, when we get into this type of mindset and into this lifestyle, and if we date from that perspective where our where logistics and our work and all these things are just our entire identity, again, we're not going to attract a partner that meets our needs. Okay, we're not going to attract a partner that meets our needs. And it's really important that for the women who are listening to this and might resonate with some of this, that it's important to recognize, one, that you want a relationship. It's important to recognize how you want to feel in a relationship, what you want to be able to contribute to the relationship. What is your contribution? And what would you like to receive back from someone else? And really do the work to heal all the ways that you're showing up that might be pushing that away. So when it comes to how does this relate to emotional eating and weight loss and our body, it goes back to the beginning of what I was saying, where if we are cut off from ourselves because we're using food as a coping mechanism and we want to hide that behavior from somebody, if we don't feel good in our bodies and we are afraid of somebody judging us because we're judging ourselves, that's going to keep people at arm's length, and we're not going to be able to connect, and somebody's going to feel that. We're going to also attract unavailable people because we're unavailable to ourselves. Okay, and these are the reasons why, if these things are true for you, if you are somebody who uses food as a coping mechanism, if you are somebody who feels like they want to lose weight and they don't feel great in their body, why healing that is so important. Not because it makes you more lovable to somebody else. You're already lovable. You're already worthy. But because you have to be honest and say, healing this is going to make me feel more lovable to me. I'm going to be able to show up not feeling like I need to hide any part of myself. I'm going to be able to show up not worrying about being found out or being seen or being judged, because I feel like my best and highest version of me. Okay, so this is why, and this is how healing emotional eating, healing your relationship with your body can impact dating, and why maybe if you are somebody who has this type of relationship with food and with your body, but you're so accomplished in other areas of your life, like work, and you're not finding success dating, and it's frustrating for you, this might be why. Because at work, we don't need to show up vulnerable. We don't need to show up understanding our needs, making our needs, expressing ourselves, communicating our desires, right? We don't have to do that at work, right? We don't have to be in touch with that feminine energy part of ourselves. We could just be in our masculine energy at work. And so that's why at work, we can put on a bit of a mask and it's fine. And we can create, relationships and connections. But if you want to create an intimate partnership, and that's what you desire, you really have to dig deep and heal this piece of it. So on that note, Thank you so much for joining me again today. Talking about this episode was so great. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if this episode resonated with you, please join me again next week with another new one about emotional eating so you can fall in love with eating, start losing weight, and keep it off with sustainable strategies and lasting change. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with those who may benefit from this empowering knowledge. I have lots of free resources on my site to support you on your journey to loving food and losing weight. Just go to www.bewellbyak.com. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.